The world is literally entering a new phase of technological evolution before our eyes. And if just a few years ago discussions about humanoid robots seemed like something from the realm of science fiction, today it is no longer just a hypothesis, but an almost inevitable future that the largest technological powers are actively preparing for. According to several analytical centers, including reports from Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, mass production of humanoid robots could begin within the next 3 to 5 years, and their numbers could reach millions of units. If there is someone who understands the scale of the coming changes better than most, it is Elon Musk, who in recent years has consistently invested in robotics development through Tesla, gradually bringing its Optimus robot closer to the market. However, within the industry, there has long been an unspoken consensus. The current version of Optimus, despite impressive progress, is still far from becoming a full part of everyday human life. Yes, the robot can perform basic tasks, move around, and interact with objects, but this is only the first step. According to insiders from several Silicon Valley technology companies, including sources referenced by Bloomberg and The Information, the real revolution will not come with the current generation of robots, but with the next one, the generation currently being developed in closed laboratories. This is where a name that has not yet been officially confirmed but is actively discussed within the industry is increasingly appearing: Grock Gen 1. According to information leaked through supply chains and former employees of Tesla contractors, this represents a completely new generation of humanoid robot that will differ radically from Optimus, not only in appearance, but also in architecture. Unlike current prototypes, Grock Gen 1 will feature a body much closer to the human form, with a more advanced motor system, precise manipulators capable of performing delicate tasks, and a fundamentally new level of balance and coordination. But the key element will not be the body, it will be the brain. According to analysts, the system will involve deep integration of next-generation artificial intelligence models capable of learning in real time, adapting to the environment, and making decisions without constant connection to the cloud. Some sources claim that Grock Gen 1 is based on a hybrid architecture, combining local computing with distributed neural networks, making it truly autonomous. This means the robot will not simply execute commands, but will understand context, interpret situations, and act almost like a human. That is why a phrase that until recently sounded radical is increasingly being heard within the industry. A new type of being could appear on Earth: intelligent artificial entities. These would not simply be machines carrying out programmed actions, but systems capable of learning, making decisions, and even demonstrating primitive forms of creativity. According to experts from MIT and Stanford, the boundary between a tool and an independent system is beginning to blur, and this is already creating serious discussions at the governmental level. At the same time, it is becoming clear that the key factor behind the mass adoption of such robots will be cost. And this is where perhaps the most unexpected shift is happening. According to insiders from Asian manufacturing supply chains, Tesla and its partners are actively working on reducing component costs by using the same approaches that previously helped dramatically lower the price of electric vehicles. As a result, the basic version of a humanoid robot could cost roughly the same as an affordable car, or even less. Some estimates suggest a price range of $10,000 to $20,000 within the first years after mass production begins. This means that for the first time in history, technologies of this level could become available not only to corporations, but also to ordinary households. A robot that can clean a house, cook food, perform minor repairs, care for elderly people, help with children, and even complete intellectual tasks. All of this is transforming from a concept into a potential standard of living. And it is this moment that many analysts call the point of no return. But at the same time, concerns are also growing. According to reports from the World Economic Forum, automation could affect hundreds of millions of jobs worldwide. If robots really become capable of performing a wide range of tasks, cheaper and more efficiently than humans, it will lead to massive changes in the labor market. Governments are already discussing possible scenarios, from introducing universal basic income to completely restructuring education systems. Another major area of concern is safety. If such systems possess a high degree of autonomy, the question of control arises. Who will be responsible for the actions of a robot? How can mistakes or misuse be prevented? And most importantly, can we guarantee that such systems will always act in the interests of humans? According to experts in AI safety, this issue is becoming central to the new technological era. Some analysts go even further, suggesting that in the long term, humanoid robots could form their own ecosystem, where interaction between machines happens faster and more efficiently than interaction between humans. This creates both enormous opportunities and new risks that cannot yet be fully assessed. Nevertheless, despite all the concerns, the advantages of the technology are also obvious. Humanoid robots could solve the problem of labor shortages, especially in developed countries with aging populations. They could take over dangerous and physically demanding jobs, reduce injury rates, increase production efficiency, and accelerate infrastructure development. In medicine, they could become assistants to doctors. In construction, they could replace teams of workers. And in everyday life, they could completely transform the concept of home comfort. And perhaps the most important factor is the speed of change. If the adoption of new technologies previously took decades, today the cycle has been reduced to just a few years. This means that the transition to a world where humanoid robots become a normal part of life could happen much faster than most people expect. That is why more and more experts agree we are standing on the threshold of one of the largest technological shifts in human history. And the question is no longer whether this will happen, but how quickly we will find ourselves in a world where machines will live and work alongside us, with capabilities that increasingly resemble our own. As this technology moves closer to becoming reality, another scenario is increasingly being discussed in closed circles, one that until recently was considered too radical even for futurists. It concerns the moment when humanoid robots stop being just assistants and begin becoming full participants in the economic system. Today, analysts from McKinsey and PwC are already modeling scenarios in which robots could officially perform paid work, enter into digital contracts, and even generate income for their owners. In practice, this means the emergence of a new class of assets, not just devices, but autonomous economic units. Imagine a situation where one person owns several robots, each working in different fields. One is involved in construction, another in logistics, and a third in service operations. This scenario is already being discussed in the context of a future economy where human productivity will directly depend on the number and capabilities of robotic assistants a person owns. But this is exactly where one of the most serious questions emerges: the issue of inequality. If access to such technologies is initially gained primarily by large corporations and wealthy individuals, it could create a sharp divide between those who own robots and those who have to compete with them in the labor market. According to economists, this could become the largest redistribution of wealth since the Industrial Revolution. At the same time, geopolitical tensions around robotics are increasing. According to analytical publications in the Financial Times and Wall Street Journal, the United States, China, and several other countries have already effectively entered a new race, a race for leadership in the field of physical artificial intelligence. And if competition previously focused on algorithms and data centers, the key question now is becoming, who will be the first to create a mass-produced, affordable, and truly autonomous humanoid robot? Sources in the defense industry also point out that technologies originally developed for civilian applications inevitably attract military attention. Humanoid systems capable of operating in complex environments, rapidly adapting, and performing tasks without putting humans at risk open completely new possibilities in the military sphere. And although companies officially emphasize the peaceful nature of these developments, experts do not rule out that specialized versions of such systems could appear in the coming years. Against this backdrop, governments are beginning to respond. In Europe, early attempts at regulation are already being discussed that could determine the legal status of such robots, their rights and limitations. In the United States, closed consultations are taking place between technology companies and regulators, while in China, according to local sources, government programs are being created to support the mass production of humanoid systems. But perhaps the most unexpected shift is connected with how society's perception of these technologies is changing. If people previously viewed robots as tools, today more and more studies show that humans are beginning to form emotional attachments to machines, especially when they have human-like appearance and behavior. This creates a new psychological reality in which the boundaries between humans and machines become increasingly unclear. Some experts warn about the risk of dependency. If a robot can perform all household tasks, make decisions, and even maintain conversations, people may gradually lose motivation for independent activity. This raises not only economic questions but also cultural and philosophical ones. What will society become when most work and responsibility are transferred to machines? At the same time, supporters of the technology argue the opposite. In their view, freedom from routine work will allow people to focus on creativity, personal development, science, and their private lives. History shows that every technological revolution initially creates fear, but ultimately leads to an improvement in quality of life. Perhaps humanoid robots will become the next step in this chain. However, there is another factor that makes the current moment unique: speed. According to industry insiders, next-generation prototypes are already undergoing internal testing, and some of them are demonstrating a level of coordination and understanding that was considered impossible just a few years ago. This means that the moment when such systems enter the market could arrive much sooner than most experts expect. If these reports are confirmed, the coming years could become a turning point. The mass emergence of humanoid robots will change not only the economy or the labor market, it will transform the very structure of society. A new form of interaction between humans and technology will emerge, where the boundaries between them will become increasingly blurred. And it is at this moment that the main question increasingly being raised in expert circles appears. Are we ready for the fact that beings created by us may appear beside us, but capable of acting independently? Is society ready to accept a new reality in which intelligence is no longer an exclusively human privilege? There is no answer to this question yet, but one thing is already becoming clear. The process has begun, and it is no longer possible to stop it. All that remains for humanity is to try not to fall behind its own technologies and learn how to live in a world that is changing faster than ever before. Perhaps the most alarming and at the same time exciting aspect is that the boundary between testing and real-world deployment has almost completely disappeared. According to sources close to production chains, the first limited batches of next-generation humanoid robots may appear not in laboratories, but directly in real environments, in warehouses, private homes, and even small service companies. This will not be a loud public launch, but a quiet, almost imperceptible infiltration of the technology into everyday life when people will begin to encounter it not in the news, but in their own homes. This is precisely the scenario many analysts consider the most likely. Without massive presentations or high-profile announcements, robots will simply begin to appear around us, first as a rarity, then as a convenience, and eventually as a norm. And at some point, society may wake up in a world where having a humanoid assistant becomes as common as having a smartphone. But this is where the main paradox lies. The faster a technology becomes part of everyday life, the less time there is to reflect on it. People adapt, accept, and start using it, but do not always manage to ask the key question: where will this lead in the long term? Perhaps right now we are at that very point, which will later be described in textbooks as the beginning of a new era, the moment when humanity first created not just a tool, but something capable of becoming its equal. The decisions made in the coming years will determine whether this future becomes the greatest breakthrough in history or the most difficult challenge for an entire civilization. As the first limited batches of humanoid robots begin to penetrate real-world environments, increasingly concrete usage scenarios are emerging that until recently seemed too futuristic. According to analysts from Deloitte and Accenture, one of the first large-scale applications will be logistics and warehouse infrastructure. Even now, major companies are testing systems capable of fully replacing human labor in warehouses, from unloading trucks to sorting and packaging goods. However, unlike specialized machines, humanoid robots can operate within existing infrastructure without requiring a complete redesign. which makes their deployment much faster and cheaper. The next stage is the domestic segment, and this is where the most significant psychological shift occurs. Imagine an ordinary morning. A robot independently prepares breakfast, analyzing the owner's preferences, checks the state of food supplies, orders missing items through online services, simultaneously cleans the house, and plans the day's schedule. According to insiders, some prototypes are already capable of integrating with smart home ecosystems at a level that allows them to act as the central control hub. But an even more interesting scenario is one in which the robot begins to perform not only physical, but also intellectual work. For example, helping children with education by explaining complex topics in real time and adapting to their level of understanding, or assisting adults in work, analyzing documents, preparing reports, and conducting meetings in a digital environment. This effectively erases the boundary between physical and digital labor. According to sources cited by the information, companies are already experimenting with models in which a single robot can switch between dozens of tasks during the day, making it a universal tool. And it is precisely this versatility that becomes the main advantage of the new generation. If previously each task required a separate device, now everything can be integrated into a single humanoid form factor. However, as capabilities increase, so do requirements. One of the main challenges for developers is creating the most natural interaction between humans and machines. This is not only about voice or appearance, but also about micro-movements, reactions, pauses in conversation, all the elements that make interaction truly human-like. According to experts, this factor will determine how quickly society accepts such robots. And here another unexpected trend emerges: personalization. According to insiders, users will be able to customize the appearance, voice, and behavior of their robots, creating virtually unique digital physical personalities. This opens up a huge market in which robots become not just devices, but part of a person's personal space. However, this also raises increasing ethical questions. If a robot looks and behaves like a human, how should it be perceived? Where is the boundary between machine and personality? And can a human begin to perceive such a robot as a full social participant? These questions are already being actively discussed in academic circles, and there is still no consensus. In parallel, the infrastructure for servicing such systems is developing. Similar to automobiles, service centers, software updates, and subscription models are emerging. Some analysts suggest that robots will be sold under a hardware plus AI subscription model, where the base device is complemented by continuous intelligence updates. This creates an entirely new business model that could become one of the most profitable in the technology industry. Particular attention is being paid to security. According to reports from cybersecurity specialists, humanoid robots could become a new vulnerability point if their systems are hacked or compromised. That is why companies are investing enormous resources into protection, including hardware-level security and continuous system behavior monitoring. But despite all the risks, the pace of development is only accelerating. According to information from component suppliers, order volumes for key elements, actuators, sensors, computing modules, are already growing exponentially. This indirectly confirms that the industry is preparing for a large-scale rollout. And if we look at the dynamics of recent years, it becomes clear that we are moving toward a moment when humanoid robots will cease to be a rarity. They will become part of urban infrastructure, appearing in shops, hotels, hospitals, and airports. People will begin interacting with them daily, sometimes without even realizing how radically reality has changed. And perhaps the most powerful effect will not lie in the technology itself, but in the shift of perception. A new generation will grow up in a world where the presence of intelligent machines around them is a normal part of life from early childhood. For them, it will not be a revolution, it will simply be reality. And this is where the true turning point lies. Because once a technology becomes normal, it stops being perceived as exceptional. It becomes the foundation on which everything else is built. If current insider reports and analytical forecasts are accurate, this moment may arrive much sooner than most people expect. Possibly within just a few years, the world could change so dramatically that there will be no way back. And then the question will no longer be whether we are ready for robots, but whether we are ready to live in a world where they have become as inseparable from reality as electricity or the internet. At the same time, it is important to understand one key detail. Virtually every technological revolution was first perceived as something impossible. This was the case with electricity, the internet, smartphones, and artificial intelligence. At the initial stage, society debates, then adapts, and after a few years can no longer imagine life without the new technology. That is precisely why many analysts believe that the main question today is not whether humanoid robots will appear, but how quickly they can become economically more efficient than human labor in mass professions. If this threshold is truly crossed, the speed of adoption could become unprecedented. But with new opportunities comes new responsibility. The decisions made by governments, companies, and individuals in the coming years will determine whether this technology becomes a tool of prosperity or a source of serious social disruption. Perhaps it is our generation that will witness the moment which future historians will place alongside the Industrial Revolution and the rise of the Internet. Because for the first time in history, humanity is creating not just a new tool, but potentially a new participant in its own civilization. And if today is only the beginning, then very soon we may wake up in a world that until recently existed only on the pages of science fiction.